So welcome to Warm Fuzzy Feelings. In this video we're going to learn to listen to our gut when we say that things don't quite feel right, to remove compiler warnings and not get comfortable with them, and to refactor code that actually doesn't need refactoring so that we have removed that niggling feeling that problem with the word length, what was causing it and what was going on. Let's get to the bottom of that, even though we've patched over it. Let's not patch over problems, let's get to the base of them. So welcome back, fine people. First thing I want to do is remove the compiler warning that we have. I don't like leaving this in. We have get valid guess, not all control paths return a value. Now let's remind ourselves why that happens. It happens because the computer doesn't realize that we could go around this loop forever, basically, with the user never ever submitting a valid guess. So if we look in our code and see where that actually manifests, it's under the get valid guess method here. And it's because it doesn't realize that this load of case statements are jointly exhaustive. Not the same as mutually exclusive, my philosopher friends tell me, but it doesn't realize these are jointly exhaustive, and it doesn't connect the idea of return guess here with the exiting of the loop. So the first thing I want to do is just remove this error, because we shouldn't ignore warnings. We've ignored it for long enough, and at this stage, you will start to develop like a scab over that and think to yourself, well, it's okay to ignore warnings. It's not really. Let's get rid of it. Okay, so I want to instill that into you. So it's going to be a challenge for you to try and get rid of this warning by slightly refactoring this method. Now, if that's above your head, don't worry about it. But just have a go. See how you get. Maybe close Visual Studio, take a zip of the project file so you can go back, or if you're using source control, make a commit. And then come back and have a go, try and remove the error. If you mess up your code and you can't even get it to compile, don't worry, just watch my solution. But if you're advanced enough, let's get rid of this error, refactor. So here's your challenge. Okay, so welcome back. Now the way that I'm going to remove this problem is I'm going to lift my guess here just to a higher level. I'm going to define the guess up the top before we even go into the loop. Sorry, declare it. I'm going to declare it before we go into the loop. What that allows me to do further down is, rather than returning the guess here under default, it allows me to return the guess after we leave the loop. After we've left the loop, we can be sure that every single code path returns a value, because we're always eventually going to get out of here, right? I don't want to remove, however, the default case. I think it's a good practice to always think about what happens if you don't catch things in your case statements. Now, this case, the default means that we assuming, and it is an assumption, but we're assuming the guess is valid, as we've exhausted all of our checks. So we assume the guess is valid, and because it wants some code in here, we're just going to put a break in. Okay? Now let's try that. You see, the error's gone away, and it still works. Now you may say, why am I even doing anything with valid guesses here when we've already kind of patched over the problem? Well, that leads me into the next topic. I don't want to leave nasty code behind the scenes when we've solved the problem. We've solved the problem of the length of the letters because we now will no longer allow the user to submit a guess of an invalid length. However, the problems that it was causing beforehand are still there behind the scenes. And that's not a nice thing. And where are they? Well, they're in the submit guess method. The submit guess method has some issues. Now, the first issue is with its name. It's not really just submit guess, is it? It's submit valid guess. So let's rename it to submit valid guess. Control R with it highlighted, enter the word, and let the refactor tool go through and do it. But I would test immediately it still runs, because it doesn't always work, that tool. Okay, that's good. Now let's also go and have a look at the submit valid guess definition. And I want to make a few improvements to this. Firstly, it's a bit long. It doesn't fit on the screen. It's a bit of a pill to swallow. We don't need to comment to say that my current try increments the turn number. Firstly, we've got an inconsistency between turn and try. And that's the problem, by the way, with comments, is, of course, as soon as you change your code, they go out of sync. If it's not necessary to say what it does, don't say what it does. The code says what it does. Set up a return value. Come on, we don't need to say that. All right. Now, there's another issue. Loop through all letters in the guess. Well, yeah, but then on this outer loop, we seem to be looping through all letters in the hidden word. So let's switch this round. This should say hidden word. And this guy here should say guess. Okay. Now, there's another thing. This hidden word length we've used in both cases, but in one case we're going through the hidden word, in the other we're going through the guess. Now, that's okay because they must be the same length, but let's make that more explicit. Let's rename hidden word length to just word length which immediately raises the question, which word, which is fine. Let's comment to explain what we're doing. Assuming the same length as guess. Now, we've also said receives valid guess up here. We've documented the whole method. We've changed the method name. This method is dependent on receiving a valid guess. Why don't we do the verification inside the submit method? Because we want to be able to do this sort of thing where we submit invalid guesses and we never even call the submit guess method. We're just checking it until finally the user puts something sensible in, and then we submit valid guess, and we can immediately then increment the turn number and do all the other good stuff. All right, so using word length's a little ambiguous there, but then we say that we assume it equals the guess. This is one approach. There are lots of other ways we could do all of this. And then the rest of this, I think, is absolutely fine. Now, this method fits on one page now, which makes me feel happy. Of course, that's very arbitrary. Sure, I could turn my font size down. But the way I've got it set up, you can read it easily, and our brains can hold this in context in one go, which is great. So that's really all I wanted to do here to improve this method, even though it's not giving problems anymore. It is a good habit to not let yourself sit with the discomfort of the fact that your code was misbehaving, okay? Even when you sidestep around the problem, go back and just fix the underlying problem. You want to feel good about your stuff. Okay, that's it. That's the moral of this lesson. I will see you in the next video.